Okay, I'm really tired, but I'll try to go through this as quickly as possible. I played Michu at Bushiroad Summerfest, Philadelphia, so I wanted to talk a bit about the deck. But before we get into that, I want to talk about the event. Macro scale, the event was enjoyable for me because I got to meet a lot of people I've been speaking to online for a few years. A lot of people from different fights Discord. One person who was on my team actually is Apples, who is Apples CFV on Twitter. If y'all want to check him out, he does tend to talk about like a lot of the reveals and his thoughts and stuff more so than I do. I talk about stuff, I just don't do it on Twitter. But yeah, like meeting everybody, got to meet Card Dweeb and Bacon Saver and a couple other people as well. That was all like really, really cool. Baked Bean Hater, because it was like we were like two paired teams, kind of, sort of, something like that. That was fun. What wasn't fun is the way time rules are handled. So Yu-Gi-Oh! Also recently had its time rules change for like a double loss thing. And I think like, on one hand, I do understand the need for a corporation to like limit how long they're in a venue because they're renting these venues out and everything, right? They have to abide by their policies. I also think there should be meaningful steps taken to prevent the play experience from being too negative for the players involved. And that's kind of the issue. Where do I begin? The time rules kind of incentivize people who are in a losing position to participate in unsportsmanlike behavior. The best example I can give you is I was swinging at someone and they could not guard. I knew they couldn't guard because I knew it was in their hand. And this is just because the only cards in their hand were their drive checks. So they actually forced us to take a double loss because time of the round got called as I was swinging, but before I did my drive checks. And as a result, we get double lost because the other team's pushing for it. But the moment we confirm the double loss, my opponent then tells me, oh yeah, by the way, I couldn't have possibly guarded your turn. So in that instance, I'm just like, well, why did we double loss if my player C already had beaten your player C? And while our player A still had their game in progress, our game was about to close out, you know, like, and it's something I think people can look at the situation and be like, oh, you probably are just saying this because you wanted a better placement in the tournament. And it's not really that. The thing that frustrates me is the concept of people having to deal with this at all. Because again, if I was in the opposite situation, if you're swinging at me and I know I can't guard, I would just scoop. That's literally what happened in round 7. I played against a Gridiron player. She was also very cool. Sorry, I can't remember your name. But I crit her early. She crit me early. We both healed early. And I already knew from that position. And this is something I talked about with her after like we closed out the game. I was like, I knew from that point, I'm like, oh, I have to like play in a very specific way to try and make sure you can't heal because I need to deal more damage to you than what you need to deal to me and stuff. Like, we had a more involved conversation than that. But I checked my, like, while she was like setting up her board and everything, I was checking my damage zone, my drop, my soul and everything to see how many of my triggers were out. And I was like, oh yeah, I legitimately can't win this. So I was already scooping and then time in the round got called. So, you know, that was okay. But then the thing that kind of sucks is if time in the round is called, you're not allowed to use the game state as a reason for you conceding or arguing that the other team should concede. So that's one thing I think they should rescind. Like, if you're gonna like give us the positional situation, I guess, of deciding, oh, okay, we're gonna concede or we're gonna double loss, let players actually use the one thing that can be meaningful in that situation, the board state. And you can still have your like policy that, you know, if you don't come to a decision within like 90 seconds or whatever, both teams get a double loss. I don't think they actually gave a specific time frame, but I'm just using that as an example, right? Like, I would be fine with that because it's like, okay, this is actually a punishment for us not coming to a conclusion, right? But a lot of the time, if you give players like, oh, you can use your board state as like an argument and the board state is like relatively clear, people will take that, you know? Additionally, a big thing that should be understood about Vanguard currently in the standard format is the vast majority of decks do a lot of little actions, whether that's searching or filtering or whatever, and those little actions can add up. Now, if a deck is just like, oh, I'm gonna check the top 3 and I'm gonna bot deck those cards, it's less of a problem. But even with Michu, I have all set up and I just like tap it, I soul charge 1, and then I play the order and I draw 1. That doesn't seem like that big of a deal. But if I'm searching the order first, that means I shuffle my deck and then I need to hand my deck over to my opponent for them to cut. But so often what my opponents would end up doing is I shuffle my deck, right? I hand it over to them, and instead of them just doing a quick cut so we can move on, they spend like 5, 10, 15 seconds shuffling my deck. And I'm like, wait a minute, why are you shuffling my deck longer than I did? I did like 2 or 3 of these, you know? What's up with that? And I don't mind having to talk to my opponent about that, but when it gets to a point where I kind of want to call a judge over it, that really sucks, because it doesn't feel like something I should be having to call a judge for, and a judge realistically shouldn't need to supervise my game just so my opponent isn't like progressively extending my turn, you know? It's a lot. I actually did write up a like formal complaint to Bushiroad kind of talking about this, and I'll probably post a revised version in the description if anybody wants to read that. And I say revised, but it's just because I had a couple of typos. But yeah, in any case, the event overall was fun, but the dealing with the time rule stuff was frustrating. It was extra frustrating actually because for some reason Weiss is 35 minutes while Vanguard is 30 minutes, and both of those games rounds would start concurrently, I believe. So there were a few instances where there was confusion regarding a round starting. And I think round 7, actually, we got thrown off because they started the round like 3 times. But I think the 3rd time they started it was actually a side event thing, and it was just like misspeaking. Like I'm not like trying to be hard up about that. It was just like clarity would be good, and extra consistency would cut down. Like having the consistency between the 2 games, right, would cut down on potential situations like that happening. So that's why I wanted to talk about that. But yeah, overall, the double loss thing, I think the overall execution of it just kind of sucks. There's a lot that potentially could be improved, and I hope they will improve. But I do also understand, you know, they have limitations with the venue. They don't want to be there too long. I would just hope that 5 minutes extra in a round wouldn't be too much, because I know for a fact having 1 extra minute every time it came up for me would have just been enough for us to finish our game. That being said, though, the reason I brought Michu to the event is genuinely because of Sneeze. So Sneeze is a really absurd card. It stuns your opponent's rear guard, right? It can't intercept, it cannot stand during the stand phase. This actually, I think, provides some like meaningful offset, because if your opponent leaves a body on the board, that's something that they cannot pressure you with. So a lot of the time they will do overcall, but when they overcall, the fact they're committing cards from hand is a benefit for you, because that's another thing that they won't necessarily be able to guard with. And they're also taking cards out of rotation. So like round 2, I was playing against a Sagra, and I stunned their Trick Moons into stunning their Yigma Shoulds because they called 2 of them, and then they overcalled the Yigma Shoulds with 2 more. I was able to push them to a position where they only had 3 cards in hand, which were the 3 that they got off of their Sagra drive check. And the reason I lost that game was actually this thing, because I ended up decking myself out because I could not find the Glistening Mood Michu or the Ride Skipper. So I had to keep like cycling these when I kind of didn't want to do that. So I was soul charging and decking myself out. It was whack. Like, if there's one thing they could potentially change about Michu, please make a, like, I would love a new ride line, but if you're not going to do that, give us a new all setup that has a optional soul charge rather than a mandatory one, because that would go so far in so many other games, especially because with Glistening Mood doing the bind thing, like, you need to bind your Michu so that, like, when you re-ride into this again, you can search from your deck or drop, right? Like, that means you're not going to be soul blasting off of this much. You're mainly only going to be soul blasting off of your grade 2 and grade 1 Nokno, and you only need to soul blast for the grade 1 when you call it again. So, you know, like, a lot of the time throughout a game, I only use, I want to say 4 to 5 soul. Against Blang, I might use like 6, but I get 4 inherently, and then I usually go through all of these in some way, shape, or form. So doing that isn't, like, getting the soul you're not reliant on this anymore for having the adequate amount of soul to make your plays. So the fact that you have to soul charge is really, really rough. But yeah, the lineup for the cannonballs is 3 and 3. Realistically, I should have been running 4 sneeze and 2 flower cannonball. There were game states where just being able to cycle 2 of these a turn would have allowed me to win the game, just giving power to the Nokno in the back row, right? Stunning both of their rears on the front and forcing them to decide, like, oh, am I going to keep this or am I going to, like, overcall them? And there's a lot of decks where if they overcall them, that's making a huge mistake, because you can just opt not to use this flower cannonball, because Glistening Mood Michu can use her regular cannonball effect, which, oh, sorry about that. But yeah, she can use her regular cannonball effect, which will pop a rear, and then she will get 10k, which is actually kind of useful. I think Bob is really the only matchup that this came up in a lot when I was doing playtesting. And a lot of my playtesting, I was like 45, 55 into Bob. I'm not sure how much of that was just because my test partners weren't necessarily used to Michu, but a lot of the time, just messing with their Yugma setups went really, really far. The same thing can be said for Blang as well. But yeah, really good card. Run 4 of it. Don't be like me if you take this to an event. Also, Michu is like Rogue. It's just, there's a lot of little things you can do. And like prior to Mirla, the deck definitely would just hit these situations where you would be very out of position because you're soul charging things off of all setup and you have no way to get them back. But as long as you can get a grade 2 Nokno into rotation, which the deck is kind of built around doing, you can trigger her effect. You can get your Glistening Mood from Soul. You can get any of your grade 2s or whatever from Soul. So that's good. She can even put herself back because she does grade 2 or less. She just can't get Sentinels. So yeah. I'm on 4 Mirla. Some people would rather run Yuka or would run a split. I also just really like the fact that she binds herself from Soul and then she gives your Vanguard extra power. So there were just a lot of instances where you could tweak exactly how much you were forcing your opponent to guard with, which was nice. But yeah, she does a lot. Like, she genuinely, I feel, has revolutionized the deck to some degree, just in terms of how you can play your turns out. And this is definitely just the biggest thing that, like, quality of life improvement for this deck would be getting a new grade 1 that if you ever play this from your hand, you draw a card. And then this just, you know, not having the mandatory soul charges let you do something else. Also, you can just put this in the soul with Milagros, which is nice because then you can main phase, bind it, bot deck something, prevent yourself from decking out, potentially close out a game like that. So, you know. Aside from that, 4 Glistening Mood, 4 grade 2 Nokno, 3 grade 1. I've seen some people go 3, 3, and 2, or go like just one of this. The problem I had with that in playtesting was when I'm up against Blang, I will very frequently just let them like take these 2 as the binds, especially if I'm like using Mirla. If I'm not using Mirla, I might like them take something else. But I usually try to like cycle Milagros with Mirla, and then if I'm losing these, it's fine because I usually will have more of this in my hand or drop or something. And the main thing would just be getting these into rotation so I can keep getting them behind the Vanguard. Yeah, like if you live the Blang turn, the Divine Skill turn, you can just blow them up usually. But sometimes just, you know, doing this 3 turns in a row is enough anyway. Because sometimes they get to their goal a little bit slowly. And sorry, I keep hitting my camera, but yeah, really like this lineup. I know some people might want to run tech options. I mean, if you cut one of these, you could run ladder, and ladder would help against the Blang matchup as well, and just with the binding and stuff. Either that or twin cast. Yeah, twin cast would be good. I just don't want a twin cast, and I wasn't trying to borrow one from anybody, so that's on me. Now, aside from that, 4 Milligros, of course, and then 4 Ferrica. Not much to say about that. This is your other beater. This searches your cannonballs. There are a couple of situations where I really wish this searched a Nokno, but that's about it. I wouldn't really mind cutting this down as well for other things, potentially, because, again, Mirla just makes it so easy to get your pieces that I kind of only want to run 2 of this, because that way I'm effectively running 6 copies of Glistening Mood, and then I'd be effectively running 8 orders as well because you EB3. But like, because you don't have another EB3 outlet unless you're running, I think, again, I'm not sure what the ace unit's name is. I think it's Precia, but yeah, because you don't have another energy outlet, that's kind of another reason I was just running more of this. Yeah, in any case, the deck felt really, really smooth. Like, Mirla genuinely just does so much for this deck that it's not even funny. And then PG wise, I was like this. This is not that big of a deal. I think the reason I was running this, I can't remember what the reason I was running this was. I think it was just for like guard restricts, really. But I suppose this might be more useful once Token Ranbu gets its support. But yeah, like, I don't know, a lot of decks I haven't really been feeling Elementaria because it's just a PG in a lot of situations, but if you're running other blitzes, it becomes less good. I could have been running 1 copy of I think it's Do It Myself. I just couldn't find it. I thought I had one, I couldn't find it, so I was just like, okay, I'm not gonna worry about it, we'll just do this. But yeah, overall, deck is pretty simple. I'm not really doing anything weird with my ratios, right? Like 4, 4, 3, 4, 4, 4, 1, 3, like this, you know. I already mentioned what should be fixed here. In terms of the triggers, I did something a little unusual just because you do so much drive checks. Why did I say it like that? You do so many drive checks throughout the course of a game. We got the Rose, Heals, and Crits. We got Misa, and then I'm running Nyx. So these I borrowed effect fronts for the event, but I don't think they ever mattered in any of my games. Like, every instance I had the effect fronts in my hand, they did not meaningfully change my guard math, even though in testing there were a lot of instances where they did. I think it's just probably because I never really had 2 of them in hand at a given time, but you know, it is what it is. This I was running specifically to have a 5th heal. And it's very funny, I was playing against Rezael round 4. I got him to, I think I got him to 4 or 5, and he healed down to 3, but it was probably 4. Then he pushed me to 4, and then on my turn, I healed to 3, and then I checked this OT. So I went down to 2, they were at 5. And then I just closed out the game because the 1 million was on the Miller Roast that didn't swing. Because I think it was like, yeah, it was swing, Glistening Mood. I checked heal crit, I believe. And then I swung the grade 2 Nokno, which is where I checked this. So yeah, they went to 5 from that. I put power on, I actually put power on the grade 2 Nokno rather than the grade 1 because I wasn't like really that concerned. I can't remember, I think they might have guarded the grade 1 Nokno, but yeah, this was the game ender. Even if I didn't check this, the Rezael was in a really bad position, and I hadn't really been guarding much that game. Like, I think it was partially because, like, I've seen people doing this with a couple of different decks where they'll swing like really low numbers, but I actually guarded those because the 5Ks that I was losing in those instances were my Noknos, and I don't really mind that because she just gets them back for me, right? And I can recur this repeatedly. Like, in a longer game, if I don't have to use all set up all that frequently, I can actually just straight up Persona Ride like 5-6 times just because of her. So that was cool. Realistically speaking, I think the yellow OT would be better than this in a lot of instances. The blue one, of course, because you get the extra crit, and the red one as well, because that'll just let Milligros restand. So that's really nice. But it's genuinely up to you. Oh, another big thing is I kept telling people that, like, because Nope No grade 1 becomes your Vanguard, right? Their effect fronts would get turned off. And for some reason, people still kept holding their effect fronts until I did the swap. And then they'd be like, oh, right, this is only a 15K now. So, like, as a PSA, please, 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 remember, Nope No becomes the Vanguard. And because she's grade 1, you don't get the extra shield off of your effect fronts or your effect draws. I don't think this came up with draws because the only person I saw in draws was a Sienna player, and they were just putting their draws to soul to get her like plus 15K power things, so it was all right. But yeah, had fun. There are a couple of other decks that I would like to play. If you've seen me talk online, you probably have an idea of what they are, but yeah, the way the event was run was still very frustrating to me, so I'm not super inclined to play, but I'll probably come back to Philadelphia in March, because my girlfriend's here. I like spending time with her, so it's an excuse to come out here and then chill with her. So yeah. But yeah, if any of you have any like questions about this, I will do my best to answer them. But a lot of it really just boils down to the fact that, like, I know I'm extending the video length at this point, but a lot really just does boil down to the fact that once you have Mirla, like the games you have access to Mirla are just so much better than the games that you don't, because you drive check with this, and then this can go to soul. I was actually able to dodge the bind against the Sienna player thanks to this. And then you just get whatever you want out. In the event where you do soul charge this early off of the all setup, you put it back to hand. In the event where you do that with this, you can put it back to hand. Like, this is just such a good card. Like, I do understand people still wanting to use Yuka because Yuka doesn't have the condition of like, oh, you need to like drive check with a rear, right? But it's such a really easy thing to enable that the downside, like, it feels like something that is rarely going to come up. And sometimes it does. Like, there was one instance where I couldn't use it because I had to field double Milligros because of the situation I put myself in. I wasn't wanting to like drive check with this anyway. But for the most part, this thing genuinely just feels like the most important card in the deck at this point. Like, instead of glue, it's like oil. Oiling your deck and making it run extra efficiently. But I'm also just kind of excited to see if they do give the glitters anything new in the future, particularly this one in Archetype, because I think Ava has consistently been like one of the like strongest decks. So like, I shouldn't say strongest. Ava has consistently been a deck that is like in a good position power wise, whether it's like actually at the top of the meta, if it's rogue, if it's just something that's in tier 1, tier 1.5 contention. So with Ava, I'm not interested because it's like, oh, I kind of expect it to like still get stuff that's gonna add to its toolbox utility. Archetype, I think, suffers a little bit because of the access some of her monster cards sit on. So if she gets something, that could just be really, really interesting. And for Michu, it's mostly because like this card is nuts. This card is nuts. And I'm curious to see what they do with a new version of all setup and a new ride line. You know, basically just getting the treatment that Prison just got. But I have grown partial to this. I was using them when they were in VG0. So I'm still going to use this starter, but it'll be a little unfortunate whenever I have to cut this ride line out entirely. Just sentimentality. Yeah, that's about it for me. I'm probably going to immediately record a video about Chimeramon. So yeah, y'all have a good day, and beg Bushiroad to release Celsius so I can be problematic at events by playing funny cards. Thank you.